Good morning to all. I am Aakriti from BBA-AKU-6th semester batch 1. I am here to give a presentation on the topic rent agreement. First of all, I would like to thank Sinku sir for giving me this opportunity to stand here. Starting with the presentation, what is rental agreement? Rental agreement is an official contract that is signed between both the parties. First one is landlord and second one is the tenant of the property. Who is tenant? Tenant is the person who wishes to take the temporary possession of owner's property by paying the rental amount. The tenant can stay or use the property of the owner for the time mentioned in the rental agreement. Coming to the next slide. A written rental agreement should at least included in the following provisions. First one, identification of the landlord and tenant. Second one, identification of the property. Third one, terms and conditions for the rental payment. Fourth one is the terms of the duration of the tenancy, which commonly is 1 month. After then, terms and condition for the tenancy. After then, liability rules for damages and repairs of the property if any occur during that period. And last one is the rules for termination and renewal of the contract. Coming to the next slide. Documents required for a rental agreement. First one is the original proof of ownership of the property, which can be Aadhaar card, PAN card, anything which our owner has of its own. Second one is the property papers such as tax receipt, that can be the mutation receipt. After then, 2 passport photographs of each of the parties, both tenants and landlords, and 1 copy of each of the witness. After then, documents related to address proof of both the parties and witness, which can be voter ID card of the owners and the tenants. And after then, route map of the property that needs to be rented, which will be according to the address written and mentioned in the PRDA website. Coming to the next slide. Whenever we sign a rental agreement, it is for typically 11th month, but why 11 months? As per the requirements of the Registration Act 1908, registration of a property on lease for a year is obligatory. Therefore, to skip the tedious process of registration, the rent agreements are usually drafted for a period of 11 months. And it will help us to get over the lease charges in the agreement. After then, coming to the essential elements of rental agreement, what all are the essential elements in the rental agreement? First one is the landlord's name, tenant's name and address where we are signing the agreement. After then, pet provision and parking provision. If a tenant wants to have and keep any pet with them, then it will be mentioned in the rental agreement. After then, subletting. If the second party wants to provide it to the any third party, then subletting provisions will also be mentioned in the tenant rent agreement. After then, rent payment, at which amount rent will be paid, what amount will be paid for the property. After then, maintenance clause, damages or repairs if any occur during the specified period. After then, lock-in period. Then after, notice period, lease termination and extension for after the completion of the date for which the agreement was signed. And then after, the property description, floor plan, furnishing, all the elements will be mentioned in the rental agreement. Procedure to make rental agreement. First one is draft the rental deed. Second one is print it on stamp paper. After then, place tenant and landlord's signature. Both signatures will be mentioned in the agreement. And the last one is register the deed of sub-registrar's office. Coming to the stamp duty and registration of rent agreement. Registration, the government levies the cost of registration rental agreement, which is different for every state, and typically it is between 500 to 1000 rupees. Stamp duty is payable under section 3 of the Indian Stamp Act 1899. After then, second one is the stamp duty on rental agreement varies from state to state and also depends on the duration of agreement and rental amount. And third one is the rent agreements of 1 year or more have to be registered in the rental agreement. What are the rights of a tenant which a tenant can exercise to protect himself from the unlawful demands of the landlord? First one is the Rent Control Act guarantee equal rights to both the landlord as well as the tenants. Some of the important rights under this act are mentioned. It is important for the landlord to have sufficient cause to evict the tenant without any prior notice. It states basically that if you are evicting a tenant from the property, then you will have to give some proper proof that why you are terminating the agreement. Second one is landlord cannot charge a very high amount of rent from the tenant under the rent agreement rules. The rent charged must be fair as well as competitive, which will be according to the market. The value to be charged from the tenant should be equal to the market price of the property, and if the tenant feels that he is being charged an extra amount, then he can approach the court to redress his grievances. After then, there are certain rights for the landlord as well, which are the rights of the landlord are specifically mentioned in the Rent Control Act, and some of the important rights are mentioned below. First important thing enjoyed by the landlord is to evict the tenant whenever he likes, but the eviction should be valid and on reasonable ground. The right to eviction is not guaranteed right in some of the states because it varies state to state. The second important right enjoyed by the landlord is to charge a reasonable price for the tenant, and the situation is further or compounded as there is no upper limit on the reasonable price. It is expected that the landlord should not increase the rent amount but should limit himself to an increase of 5 to 8% per year. The third important right enjoyed by the landlord is to repossess the property for a particular period of time, and if he feels that maintenance of the infrastructure is required, then they can get it on the mutual ground. This is the format of rental agreement which is actually made. First, here in the rent agreement, it is hereby executed at Patna on 6th day of February 2024 between. There are both the parties whose name are mentioned. Rajiv Kumar, son of Sukhdev Singh, his proper address is given here, and the tenant is Prithvi Singh, son of Dinesh Singh, proprietor of Mrs. Ma Medico Agency. Next, this is the second paper of the rent agreement. The part which expression shall mean and include is hire, successor and legal representatives, etc. Whereas the first party is owner in the possession of shop near post office. This is all the complete detail about the between the two parties, and after then now this agreement witnessed as under, it is all the terms and conditions which are required to sign the rent agreement. That the rate of the rent said premises is settled a sum of 5,000 rupees, that is 5,000 will be paid as a rent. After then the tenancy shall be effective from 6th day of February. On 6th day the ownership can be transferred to the tenant. After then the second party has deposited a sum of 10,000. What amount the second party has already paid to the landlord is also mentioned. From where the for what the second party is signing the agreement, the second party shall use the said shop Messrs. Ma Medico Agency. After then the second party shall not, in this agreement it is signed that subletting is not allowed, so it is also mentioned in this agreement. And if in case second party fails to pay monthly rent to the first party, consequently for the period after 10th day of month, like every month the second party will have to pay the amount on the 10th day. After that if he will not be able to pay, then it can be terminated. Here in this agreement it is mentioned, and the second party shall lead to connection from NBPDL, it is the government website. And the last paper of the agreement all mention about the second party rules and regulation, that shall not make any construction. Second party cannot do any infrastructure or construction making in this property which is leased to him. Both the parties shall have to give 3 months advance notice. Before taking any decision, both the parties will have to provide 3 days advance notice to each other. And the last terms and condition is that as stated above shall be binding on both the parties. The terms and conditions of this agreement are final and are irreversible. Like both the parties cannot get out of this agreement without following all these terms and conditions. And in the last, the sign or signature of both the parties will be there. First one is the here witness sign, and here is the first party and second party signs is there, signature is there. Thank you all for listening me in this presentation.